Thanks for being with us today, guys. This was our second week of B Church, and so maybe Jenna, can you tell us where we went this week?
We went to Golden Years.
Golden Years, and
Moses Cone.
And Moses Cone, yeah. We had a group that went to Moses Cone. I think all of us went to Golden Years, though, correct? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, in case you don't know who we are, we want to introduce ourselves to you. And so we'll start over here.
Jessica.
Michael Queen.
I'm Carter. I'm the lead pastor here at The Walk.
I'm Neal. I am the associate pastor of Community Life and Worship.
I'm Jenna.
I'm Marianne.
And I'm having a real hard time keeping my mic on, so you can just laugh at me and make fun of me while I'm fidgeting with my microphone the whole time. Anyway, so Carter has asked me to kind of lead the interview since her voice is taking a break for the Christmas holiday. So does anybody have an experience that stood out to them today that they'd like to share? Maybe while you think about that, let me ask you this question. How many of you have done B Church before? You're all part of it. Well, yeah, so we all did it last week, but this is your first year doing B Church.
It's my first year, yes.
So what's your experience been so far with B Church?
B Church has been amazing. I found that people that we've met when we've gone outside of the walls have been really open to the idea of people taking a break from church and coming out and serving, because it's rare when you have a room full of 100 or more people who are just sitting together in one place on Sunday morning, and then to have us all go out and to be the church, to serve in our community and to share the good news in a way that is engaging with folks, in a way that meets people where they are and with their needs. You can do a lot in spreading the gospel and also just listening and hearing people's stories during that time. So I found the staff at the places where we've been to be engaging. There's been a little bit of laughter, and that happens when you're with the folks sitting up here. You may or may not laugh and grow closer together as the body of Christ, but also, live it out in the world.
Yeah, so you mentioned one of the big things for you was hearing people's stories.
Yeah.
So how about you all? Have you heard stories? Did you hear stories today or last week that stand out to you, or did you talk to anybody that made an impact on you?
One of the girls there at Golden Years, her name is Connie, and she's deaf, and so you have to sign her, and it's really cool being able to connect to someone like that, because you don't, whenever you talk to someone, you're having a conversation, but whenever you talk to someone signing, you feel like it's more on an intimate level.
So communicating with somebody in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's cool. Anybody else?
I was trying to remember the guy's name that we talked to. I think you talked to him too, but he was in the Navy for 20 years.
Jerry,
thank you. I knew it started with a J and I just couldn't think of it. But got to sit down with him and talk to him a lot. He had a Panthers hat on, so we definitely got to talk.
Do you want to know the score of the Panthers game?
Negative. But so that was really cool. He seemed to know quite a bit about the Panthers and was really excited about what they had going on and stuff. So it was neat to get to connect to him like that. So.
Yeah, I had an opportunity to talk to Jerry as well, and he said, "Tell me about this new young female pastor you got." And he was pretty excited that we have somebody young and feisty. I told him that she was stirring things up and that we really liked that. And I said, we'll have to get you a video and so you can see that. And he was really excited to be able to experience what happens here, because for those of you that don't know Jane and Ann every week go and visit with the folks at Golden Years. And so he said, do you go to that church, right? And I said, yeah. And I said, well, we'll send you a video. And so it's really cool to see folks that aren't able to be with us physically on Sunday mornings be interested in just the ministry that happens because people are going and listening and hearing their stories and talking to them. What about you, Marianne? Did you hear anything? Meet anybody?
I got to talk to somebody I met last time we went there. His name was Pee Wee. And whenever I first met him, he was just watching this either the Steelers or a basketball game. And he was talking about how his son played basketball, how he gets to see his son as much as he can.
Hmm.
And then I saw him today, and he was about the same. But he's always happy whenever I see him. But he's just the favorite person. I love going to see him.
Yeah, so you've built a relationship with him, and you've visited several times throughout the year, right?
Yeah.
So the focus student group has been to hang out with the guys or the people at Golden Years, right? So what about last week? You worked on a mural last week, right?
Yeah.
Tell us about that mural.
We had different groups doing different things, and I was a part of the mural group with Ross, and we all got together, and Ross had this bright idea, and it came out really great, and it was different cities. We had different towers, and like the Space Needle, Eiffel Tower, some other stuff.
So skylines from
Yeah,
different cities.
Yeah. And then we had a quote that says, "Oh, the wonders we create," and we just left it at that because that's pretty complicated itself once you think about it. And it was fun. I heard that the kids really liked it and wanted us to come back and do some more.
Yeah. So we were at Act Together, a youth crisis center in Greensboro last week. And Jessica, what was your experience like at Act Together? What were you working on?
Last week I wasn't there.
Oh, you weren't there last week.
Yeah.
Sorry, I set you up for failure there. So tell us about your experience this week.
Really the most memorable part of this week was when we walked around singing the carols and people actually started to sing with us. It was really interesting.
Yeah, that's pretty cool to see. It's like Buddy the Elf says, the best way to spread Christmas cheer is for, does anybody know?
Sing loud for all to hear.
Yeah. And even though we weren't necessarily even singing together at the same time, much less in the same key.
Or
Or the same song.
Or the same
Yeah.
song. Yeah,
Same
we were just all over the place, but people were really excited to share that time with us, and it's just fun to sing and be silly, and I think even folks that live in nursing homes can get excited about that. How about you, Michael? What was your experience last week?
Last week, when we were at Act Together, Carter had asked me to kind of lead up blowing leaves and kind of cleaning up some of the leaves on the property. And, I mean, that's what we did. There were a lot of leaves. But we got finished with one side and was able to clean that up and moved over to the other side because it's got two different areas. And myself and Craig and I think Pete had a blower, and there's a couple other folks who were just raking and stuff. So it was really neat. We had a good time blowing the leaves around on each other and just hanging out and goofing off, like you said. So
Yeah.
it was
So
good.
talk to us a little bit about why you think something as mundane as blowing leaves could be important.
I think it's just a matter of blowing the leaves themselves. I don't know if that's the important part of it anyway. I think it's just a matter of showing community and just being willing to step out and do something for somebody else that maybe you've never met, or in this case I didn't even realize the place was even there, and a lot of folks didn't know that it was even there. But it was really cool to be able to go in and show how through a little bit of action you can really impact people or communities or whatever, and just by going in and showing that you are willing to,
But
work
also
a
be
little bit.
impacted yourself,
Mhm.
right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
because
definitely.
like you said, I had no idea that it was there either
Right.
before we started planning it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, part of the of B Church that we're working on this year is we're incorporating each week a theme of a sense. So the first week was here, and I think that speaks a lot to that, to the fact that we didn't even realize that this place existed. And for a lot of the kids that live there, that stay there, probably feel like they don't exist in our eyes and that they're not being heard. So that was one of the things that we talked about. So Carter, maybe you could tell us a little bit about the hearing aspect of that and how that ties in to the Christmas story.
Yeah, we've been starting each Sunday morning with reading a different part of the Christmas story, starting back before Mary found out that she was pregnant with Jesus. Last week we we're with Zechariah, and he was in the temple, and he got the good news from God's angel saying that he and his wife Elizabeth were going to finally have a son. They'd been waiting forever and ever, and everyone had given up on them because they were old. But God said, I hear your cry, I hear your burden, and God showed up in that space. And so, the cries of the homeless teens or the teens that are in transition in Greensboro, those are often not heard at all. And so I think by showing up, we can, with the sound of the leaf blower or with the sound of paint on the walls, we could say,
What does paint on the wall sound like?
shh, shh,
Oh,
shh,
cool.
shh. We can say, I hear you and I see you. I thought Neal said something really great this morning when we were at, he says things great all the time, but this morning when we were at Golden Years, we had just finished Jessica's favorite part where we had walked around with the presents and we had sung. And he says, now go share your presence with them. And so when we are present with people, whether that's listening or seeing, we open ourselves up to being in relationship with them. So they are transformed by that, and we are too. And that's where a lot of this good news and the birth of God's love happens.
Yeah, so this week's theme was smell. And, it's loosely tied to areas that often we associate smell not being so great, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about you all, but I remember growing up and going to visit my grandmother in the rest home. There was just a terrible smell, and I hated being there because it smelled so awful. But that's not really what we associate with Christmas, right? We associate cookies and, fir trees and all sorts of things that smell good, right? Or what? Brownies. Michael has a brownie that he's waiting to eat patiently from lunch. But,
Where is it?
it makes me think about, well, what did it smell like for Joseph and Mary? And just kind of a spoiler alert for Christmas. If you don't know what happens in the Christmas story, Joseph and Mary end up in a stable. And we don't want to jump too far ahead in the story, but don't tell anybody. So they end up in a stable in a place that is not a place that smells good. When we would really want to be in a hospital, which is another place that there are a lot of smells that sometimes aren't good. And one of the things I think is really interesting about smell is it's actually one of our strongest senses of memory. So that whenever we smell something, it can immediately take us back to something. Have you experienced that before?
Yes.
Maybe if there's a food that you love, or you were somewhere and it smelled awful and you just it takes you back to that place. So what do you think that means for us as Christians, as kind of an allegory or a metaphor for our lives, that we're leaving a scent in everything that we do? Does that make sense? That might be a little out there and a lofty idea, but we're leaving behind a scent of Christ, right? And so can you talk a little bit about the ways that you've seen our congregation leaving a pleasing scent as we've gone outside the walls?
Can you clarify?
Can I clarify? Yeah. So we spent today at a rest home and at the hospital, and last week at Act Together. And also we had another group that went to, help me with the name of the place. Do you remember?
Room at the End?
Room at the End, thank you. Which is a place for expectant mothers. And we're leaving those places, the people that we interact with memories about church. And so sometimes people don't have great experiences with church, right? A lot of us haven't had great experiences with church, and that's how we've ended up at the Walk Together. We call ourselves a group of misfits a lot of times, but really I think that name is kind of, while it resonates with us, it also probably applies to everybody, because in a lot of ways, church has left a bad smell in our nose. So how are we trying to make that smell more pleasant?
So think brownie's not stable.
Right.
Yeah.
Kind of left the smell of pumpkin at the nursing home.
Perfect. Yeah. Tell us about that.
Pumpkin pies that we brought with us.
Uh-huh.
They were really a lot and probably eaten them, so now it smells like pumpkin.
Jesus smells like pumpkin pie.
And fresh flowers, too, right?
Yep.
We bought poinsettias.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was actually a lot of time was spent in those poinsettias by one of our members, Margie Brinkley, who grew those, I'm assuming from seed. I don't know how greenhouses do it, but Margie owns a greenhouse and grew those poinsettias. And so she probably had to smell a lot of fertilizer that doesn't smell so great to make something beautiful come up. What were you going to share, Marianne?
They're not scents, but like love and laughter
Mhm.
or happiness. Because when we walked in there, they were all smiling, and like when we sang, if we messed up, they'd all laugh. Just seem happy, and it was just they were having a blast.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what makes smell so important is the things that are happening around it, right? Because the things that make hot chocolate smell good, hot chocolate smells good by itself, but the thing that makes us enjoy it a lot of times is the thought of gathering with friends and family and enjoying hot chocolate together, right? And so those memories are what are important. So maybe we weren't offering a particular scent, but we were offering an opportunity to connect and to relate to one another, and those memories are important.
I think that especially with smell, you know it's always associated with something. And so anytime you smell anything, you automatically associate it with either something you remember or something, and maybe that something's good, maybe that something's bad. So I think in thinking about it in terms of, be church, I think our wish is to leave there with a pleasing scent, so that when they go back and they look at that wall or they look at the presents or the flowers or whatever, they get that memory and they associate that with something that is Christ-like.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything else you guys want to share? Well, if you have not been a part of B Church or a part of a church at all, we would love for you to join us. We meet at 9:30 every Sunday morning in December. We're going to meet at 9:30 here at the Walk, 485 Brightwood Church Road, and we would love for you to be a part of what we're doing. Each week is a surprise, so you show up and you have no idea what you're going to do. Carter sends out some pretty helpful hints, though, and she's doing a great job at keeping the secrets.
Should we do any teasers for next week? This is going to... Come ready to be touched by God's grace. That's your hint for
Yes.
tonight. That's all.
Hopefully that doesn't sound too creepy.
It's not creepy.
We're not going to touch you. Jane might give you a hug and we'll shake your hands. And yeah, if she's not sick, Jane will give you a hug. But we would love for you to join us in B Church, and we would love to share more stories with you. So ask any of us or pull anybody that you know from the Walk. We would love to tell you about what we're all about and what B Church is all about. And thank you guys for spending some time with us this afternoon. And we'll see you next week. Everybody wave to the camera. Bye. Merry Christmas.